Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is November 1st, about 3 in the morning, the middle of the night, and we're up early this morning because we can't go to sleep. Yes, the election is around the corner. The 2022 midterms will determine the direction of America in 2023 and beyond. It has a lot of impact on what we're going to see happening during the recession, during the food crisis, with so much on the line. Yet there's something that is happening at this moment, and has been for at least 30 days, that we've just stumbled onto, and we're troubled by it, because it's something that most people don't know about. It's something that will impact Americans, but not necessarily in the way that we would think, like with an election. We're going to explain exactly what we're troubled by and what it could mean to you and everyone in America in just a moment. But first, we do want to mention, if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. And of course, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out all across the world to hear your voice, to receive your tweets, your chats, and even your phone calls from whatever country to tell us what you think is the important information that is affecting us all. Because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to free speech, even if your government doesn't agree, even if the internet overlords don't agree. We want to hear your voice every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. telling us what you think. And we hope you'll join us this Sunday as well. There's an old proverb many people may not be familiar with. Dovreya no proveya. You probably aren't familiar with that in its original language, which is Russian. But translated into English, you probably remember this if you remember Ronald Reagan. Even if you've heard about Ronald Reagan, you've probably heard this. Trust but verify. It's a very important statement, and it's critical to what we're going to be talking about in just a few moments, because we trust and back the blue. There is no question. Trust but verify was important, and it took us through the 1980s, and it has been applied to many issues throughout the nation, year after year, decade after decade. We have been asked by various elected officials to trust them, even though we have seen their economic policies lead us into a recession. We have been asked to trust their international policy, even though Americans have been abandoned in Afghanistan and the Ukraine. We are seeing international tensions rise. We have been asked to trust and believe in our elected officials, even as we have seen Bob Menendez about to be charged with crimes. Hunter Biden remains free, even though there are 400 charges pending with the FBI. It's kind of tough. But there's something else that's happening. Something that's happening behind the scenes. We've talked about it a little bit on the program, but you probably haven't noticed it before. Let's go into some detail. You may remember that on October 1st, we sent out this letter talking about the Chinese government, the Communist Party of China, opening up a police station in the Lower East Side of New York City. International news media have verified that China has opened up police stations, 3 stations in Canada, 55 stations around the world, and in the United States, at least 1 station, which is reportedly in New York, which again we believe is in the Lower East Side of New York. Now, this is not a joint action with any international policing agency. It's not something with Interpol. It's not something that seems to have been approved by anyone in the United States government. We say that because, as we asked in this letter, reaching out to the White House, Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, the Department of Justice, appointed Governor Kathy Hochul, New York City Mayor Eric Adams. We reached out even to Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo, Broome County Executive Jason Garnar. We reached out to just about everyone to try and find out who authorized the Chinese government opening up a police department on American soil and enforcing the laws of China in the United States. We've asked many questions about this, and so far we have received 0 answers. That was 1 month ago. But we're not letting that go. We have continued to look at this. We have continued to talk about this. But on October 7th, we also took a moment to have a different conversation. You see, at the same time that the Chinese national government, the Communist Party of China, have been making inroads into the United States, well, at the same time, on October 7th, we reported and we attended a New York State Hate and Bias Prevention Regional Council meeting. The New York State Division of Human Rights, the DHR, has been going around to 11 regions throughout New York State, having relatively quiet meetings with a handful of select individuals to try and put together a rapid reaction force. This was an event that politicians were not allowed to attend. They have no idea what's going on. We don't know who's in charge of this. We don't know what its purpose is. We don't know what its funding is. We don't know what this rapid reaction force will be. There are many, many questions that surround this. The one thing that we do know is that the Hochul Delgado government of New York is moving forward. They are starting this program. Some enforcement power that will exist by the end of this year, it seems. That should really put people at pause. Because when we couple that with the fact that we know there is a Chinese government police force in the United States, at least in New York City, that may be working in conjunction with the Confucius Institute, which has its grasp, its roots, embedded in many colleges throughout this nation, including the College of Eric Swalwell, including Binghamton University in Broome County. We talked about that on the Sunday live stream with several individuals, including attorney Joe Murray, talking about his knowledge of what's happening in the Lower East Side and whether or not Eric Adams may be aware of this or if he authorized this. I want to put those things together because, again, we want to trust our government. We want to trust our leaders at every level of government, but we must also verify. And we're not able to do that. Who in the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Justice allowed this to take place? Who in New York State's government or New York City's government allows this to exist? We want to trust that New York State is doing the right thing, but we can't verify what they're actually going to do. What is their plan, their mission, and how are they going to enact this? We don't know. Now that brings us to a more recent issue that we just noticed today. Now, to explain that, we have to remind you that the United States has a police force, the Capitol Police. They're a little different than most police forces or any legal authority in the United States. See, the United States Capitol Police, their mission is to protect Congress. That's their total thing. In fact, looking at their mission statement, you can see it is to protect the Congress, its members, employees, visitors, and facilities so it can fulfill its constitutional and legislative responsibilities in a safe, secure, and open environment. Now, that has almost entirely isolated them to Washington, D.C., and to the Speaker of the House to some extent. they have a very limited ability to interact with the American people. It has been centered in Washington, D.C. It has been centered around the Capitol itself. That is, of course, up until January 6th. And we have seen that this is something that the Capitol Police have expanded before. In 1988, the U.S. Capitol Police had their services and their mandate expanded so that they would be able to more readily affect and protect the president, the vice president, the Supreme Court, and all the members of Congress. So they have, over time, expanded their powers. But after January 6th, well, as we saw on July 6th, as it was stated by the United States Capitol Police, on July 6th of 2021, they made a plan to expand their power to all 50 states, to spread themselves across the entire nation, in part because they were investigating, or we are told they were investigating, possible leads for the January 6th riot. Okay, maybe that's true. But there's something odd about that, because we know that the FBI have been handling the investigations throughout the entire nation. Why do we need the Capitol Police to do something that the FBI is already doing, that local police are already working in conjunction with the FBI to do? The Capitol Police don't need to investigate that. There are already authorities doing that. But yet they're going to expand. And let's also remember, the Capitol Police don't answer to anyone but Congress. See, unlike your local police force, which will have a chief of police that responds to your local mayor, or maybe on the state level, the state police would answer to the governor. That's not the case what we see here. It's not even like the federal marshals that would be answering to the Department of Justice, say Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of New York, the Attorney General of the United States. No. The Capitol Police answer to the Speaker of the House. They answer to Congress. They don't answer to anyone else. That is expanding into 50 states for reasons that aren't very clear, and if anything, duplications of efforts that are already ongoing, and quite honestly, at this point, 2 years after the fact, have already been resolved. That may be somewhat old news, as is the fact that the Capitol Police already stated that they were going to be opening up offices in California and in Florida. In California, we can understand. Again, their job is to protect the Speaker of the House as one of the members of Congress. But why would they go to Florida? You would think they might come to New York State because, well, Chuck Schumer is the majority leader in the Senate. Wouldn't they protect the leader of the Senate? You would think so. But instead they went to Florida. Why Florida? There's no reason for that. That doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't fit their mission to protect members of Congress. And then we were faced with a very curious question. You see, before you, we ran into November 1st this ad for a position, a police officer, a U.S. Capitol Police officer, with a starting salary of $73,852. That's a wonderful amount of money, I have to tell you. Their job description is to enforce federal laws, the laws of the District of Columbia, and the regulations of Congress. So there's a police officer, a Capitol Police officer in New York State, in Binghamton, the southern tier of New York, Broome County of New York, enforcing Washington, D.C. regulation. That seems to conflict with New York State's Constitution. It conflicts with the authorities, the law enforcement that we have in New York State and the FBI. Their duties are to physically protect the U.S. Capitol complex, which is not in New York State, nor is it in the southern tier of New York. Members of Congress, well, you could possibly do that, but that's a bit unusual. Visitors and staff from threats of crime and disruption, well, that would be in D.C., not in New York State, and serves as a deterrent to crime and other violations of laws, rules, and regulations. What laws, rules, and regulations? The laws, rules, and regulations of Washington, D.C. New York State is a state. It is sovereign. It is separate of that. That's what the 10th Amendment is for. So why do we have this Capitol Police officer in the southern tier of New York in the city of Binghamton? And it may seem like a little thing to most people, but it really isn't. It's a very big deal. Because we have an agent of the government who answers only to the Congress, and we don't know how many of these police officers are being hired. And where else are they being hired throughout New York State? The headquarters of the New York 19th isn't in Binghamton, nor the New York 22nd before the gerrymandering of Democrats redrawing the congressional lines. That wasn't in Binghamton either. There is no member of Congress that is located in Binghamton, New York. Not a member of the House, not a member of the Senate. So why are they in Broome County, New York? How many other counties do they exist in? How many people are being hired in each county? We found that to be interesting questions, and so we decided to look around, and quite honestly, there are no answers here. Even though we were looking for the answers, if you put in Capitol Police New York, looking for any answer, and we will update this so you can see this live with us, of the 3 million, over 3 million different results you could get, the answers are 3 days ago, an ex-Capitol Police officer found guilty of obstruction. Fine. It has nothing to do with New York State. Has nothing to do with hiring Capitol Police officers in New York State in the southern tier. The only other answers we get are the break-in, the hammer guy at Nancy Pelosi's house, and his interaction with Paul Pelosi, which has its own questions, many questions of its own. But this has nothing to do with New York State. There is no connection to New York State. The one connection that we could think of, the one connection that could possibly be made, is the question of Mr. John Lezak. Now, John Lezak, at the end of September, was arrested for his actions on January 6th, and he was a member of Binghamton University. Mr. Lezak previously was a student at Binghamton University. He was walking in conjunction with several other individuals, and these individuals had like-minded views about government and life, which isn't a crime. It is being demonized, and we've seen it demonized in the Binghamton Review, a conservative college newspaper. But the fact is, Mr. Lezak, no matter who he associated with, association does not convey guilt. He committed no crime, not in his associations. He committed no crime in going to events in Washington, D.C. There is a dispute on the level of severity of walking in the Capitol on January 6th. Are the U.S. Capitol Police hiring officers and agents to enforce D.C. law, the law of Congress in Broome County because of one individual that's already been arrested? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't seem to serve a purpose. The United States government is spending $73,000 per agent, and there are unknown numbers of these agents that are going to be hired in Broome County and potentially 62 counties throughout New York State. And how many counties across every state in the United States? How many of these agents are we hiring? To do what? And that brings us back to our initial thought. Trust, but verify. We trust our law enforcement. We have to. We believe in them, and more often than not, as much as they get demonized by the mainstream media, as much as they get demonized by political agendas across this nation, like with BLM or Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, known as PLOT, the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Ithaca chapter that believes in violence, as much as they get demonized by these splinter organizations to much brouhaha and media coverage, the fact is, law enforcement throughout the United States does an excellent job of protecting the public. And the number of incidents where that isn't the case are very small, especially compared to virtually every government in the rest of the world. But yet we have Capitol Police in New York State. We have Chinese government agents in a police station in New York City. We have New York State putting together a rapid reaction force that has no defined mission, no defined terms, and no accountability, apparently. This troubles us. We have 3 different agencies all acting at the same time in the United States. We don't know if they're collaborating or if they're working independently. We don't know what their missions are, what their goals are, how they are affecting those missions and goals, who is going to be affected, and what rules and regulations and laws will they be using to enforce their actions. The Chinese agents in New York City, we know they have no jurisdiction, but yet they're still doing that. And so far, there has been no agency from the DOJ, the White House, all the way down to the local level. No one seems to say that they've been stopped. As far as we know, over the last 30 days, the Chinese government is still operating a police station, at least in New York City, and may well be operating in California or in Delaware, Maryland, Illinois, any of the progressive strongholds throughout this nation. When we think about what has been said about the 2022 election, we are hearing Democrats who, now that they are assured that they will be losing, that they will lose power, both at least in the House, if not in the House and the Senate, they're now making the claim, running around the United States and saying, well, that may be because of cheating, that the election could be in danger, that they don't know if they can trust the results. This is coming from Democrats. So we're seeing so many questions that are happening right now in our government. I mean, it was just a couple of days ago, October 27th, it was on Instagram, a Phoenix TV station. It is a fact. KSAZ TV out of Phoenix called the election, or accidentally called the election for the Democrat 12 days ahead of the election. At the same time that we are getting news now from Project Veritas that Eric Adams is more than willing to ignore court orders to rehire the people he fired because of the pandemic. And that similar ruling would affect New York State and Governor Hochul, forcing her to rehire the 34,000 doctors that she fired. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not trying to give you a conspiracy theory. I am trying to highlight there's a question here. Something seems very odd. We have secret agencies or agencies that are well below the radar of any major news media organization that are taking actions that are affecting Americans and other individuals in our nation without anyone having any idea of what's happening. We're seeing Capitol Police move into communities that have nothing to do with the Capitol. We have law enforcement agencies being put together by a division of the human rights. And we think you should ask these questions. You should ask these questions of our elected officials. You should be asking these questions of appointed Governor Kathy Hochul and appointed Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado. You should be asking these questions of your local government, County Executive Jason Garnar, Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo. We should be asking these questions of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who are in charge of the Capitol Police. We should be asking these questions at many levels in our government. What is going on? What is the DOJ doing about the Chinese police in New York? What's happening in our nation? And why is it so hard to get answers? Where is the transparency we were promised? In 2019, the Biden-Harris administration promised us we would be seeing absolute transparency. We were promised by Kathy Hochul that she would not be like disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo and would provide transparency. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe this is absolutely a non-event. Maybe the Chinese government has already been found out and rooted out of New York City, and they didn't open up in any other police forces, police stations in the rest of the United States. Maybe. Except the Confucius Institutes, which are known to be spy factories in our colleges, would tend to make us believe they aren't giving up that quickly. Maybe the Rapid Response Division of the Human Rights Division of New York State, maybe they're not a law enforcement division. Maybe they're just paper pushers. Maybe we're seeing the Capitol Police expand into every county in New York State, in this country, because they want to protect every single senator and every single representative of the House in every county they could possibly enter in the United States. And therefore, there must be at least one officer in every single county in America. But that just doesn't sound right. Shouldn't we have more accountability? Shouldn't there be more transparency? How can we trust if we cannot verify? It should be a simple thing to do. But we'll ask you, do you share our concerns? Do you find these questions to be troubling? Or is it something that you're not concerned about and you're not going to worry? We'd like to hear what you have to say. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We thank you, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. I know you've heard it before. What difference does it? You make the difference. When you watch, chat, tweets, your likes and shares, and your subscription, you make the difference. From across the world, you help us to keep the lights on and the stream alive. You are making the difference to fight the woke and the crazy legislation that we see before. We at No Soundbites Allowed, and I want to thank you for everything that you do in helping us reach our goal, and your likes, your tweets, your comments, and your subscriptions to the channel. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart. And this is a special thank you to those who have donated to the channel and helped us in all of our efforts. We will strive to make this channel the best that we possibly can, because you deserve no less. Thank you.